The first session of this webinar is led by Dr. Jen Djibouti, parenting coach and founder of Parenting with Dr. Jen. She is also the convener of this Back to School Without Stress webinar.
So, dear parents, you are the most important piece when it comes to your child's academic journey. What you know and what you do with what you know is what makes the difference. Because when you have with strategies to be able to help your child when they encounter different challenges on their journey, it's going to completely change the overall result that they are going to get. But when you have, when you as a teacher, as a school owner, as a parent even, does not understand that there are certain factors that every child needs to be able to perform at their best academically, the tendency will be to label the child. We label them lazy, we label them dumb, we label them as dull, right? And if there's one thing I want each and every one of us here to remember by the end of this webinar, is the fact that there is no such thing as a dull child. It just doesn't exist. There isn't. There is no reason why a child will be called dull. And I'm going to prove that to you throughout this webinar. We're going to see why there is no such thing as a dull child. And we're going to see how even the child that struggles today can actually excel tomorrow if only you know exactly what needs to be done. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the outline for this webinar, my sessions today and tomorrow, what we are going to cover throughout the course of this webinar. On day one, which is today, I'm going to be teaching you, firstly, we're going to look at why some children struggle academically. And this is so important because, like I said, if you don't know why, you cannot even begin to attempt the how. You cannot attempt to solve a problem if you do not know where the problem is coming from in the first place. You cannot begin to solve a problem when you do not understand the root of the problem that you're having to deal with. So when a child struggles academically, the first question you want to ask is why? And this is not just about the child who's at the bottom of the class. It's also about the child who's having constant C's and B's. Is it possible for this child to go from C's and B's to A's and A pluses? It's possible. It's very possible if you know what to do, if you create the right environment and you are equipped to be able to help your child thrive. So the focus of this webinar is to help you help your child thrive academically, because it's possible for every single child to thrive academically. So we're going to look at, on day one today, we're going to look at strategies to boost intelligence. We're going to look at what you need to know about intelligence. We're going to look at 7 ways that you can boost a child's intelligence, because intelligence is not fixed. But first, we're going to go through why some children struggle academically. We're going to go through points like learning incompatibility, learning disabilities, poor study habits, and a whole other range of things. So sit tight, because we have a whole journey to go through. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach on how to help your child thrive academically. We're going to look at what to look for in a good school. We're going to look at what you can do from where you are, because let's face it, most of us registered our children in certain schools. So when I'm going to begin to teach about what to look for in a good school, you may begin to think that, hey, you already made a bad choice. So we're going to study what you can do from where you are, because there's always something you can do from where you are while you're trying to find a more permanent solution. We're going to look tomorrow at how to help your child learn effectively. That's where we'll look at the different learning styles. That's where we're going to look at how to create a right learning environment for your child. We're going to look at how you can get more involved to help your child do better in their academics. Regardless of where they are, there's always something more that can be done. Okay? So first, I'd like to start by having us reflect on this particular subject. Think about that child in your school. I'm sure each and every one of us here has some academic background. So think about that child during your childhood. Think about any child in your school, for example, or your class, who just never seemed to understand what was being taught. It may not be another child. It may be you. Maybe you are here and your academic journey was turbulent. Maybe you are here and your academic journey was a difficult one. So think about it. Think about what you went through. Think about what that child that had those struggles may have been going through. Think about what they were called, because that's one of the things I want us to focus on during this webinar. The fact that children like this are called dull, they are called dumb, or they are even called blockhead, which is not the case. Think about what such labels may have brought on such a child, what it may have brought them to think about themselves, because that's actually where the problem is. The fact that when you label a child as dull, the child ends up believing that they are dull, that they're not capable of much. That is why the parent, again, is the most important piece. Because even with the child that struggles, the parent or the caregiver has the right mindset, they are going to be able to help that child and preserve the potential that that child carries. Because every child is born great. Every child is born with tremendous potential. But what happens along the way is that this potential is not properly handled. So it's not expressed in adulthood. There's so many of us that had so much potential, but because of what we've been through, because of our journey to adulthood, that potential was eroded. That potential has not been able to be expressed. Every child is born great. Okay? So intelligence is not fixed. That's the second thing I want us to remember. First thing is that there's no dumb child. There's no dull child. It doesn't exist. The second thing I want you to remember by the end of this webinar is the fact that intelligence is not fixed. It can be developed. The struggling child today can become an intelligent child tomorrow. The fact that a child struggles today doesn't mean they will struggle forever. Remember, I said that's why it's important for you to understand where the challenges could be coming from, because understanding that positions you to be able to help this child excel. So a struggling child today can become an excelling child tomorrow. So there are 21 people, I came across 21 people in history who were able to accomplish great things, right, in their time. And what's most interesting about these people is not the fact that, they did these great things, but it's the fact that they had tremendous challenges during their academic years or during their childhood days. There's one of them is called Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven is known for his peculiar, I think, piano pieces, right? He was a musician. He was an artist. He's one of the world's greatest musicians, right? And guess what? He became deaf. Yet he's known as one of the world's greatest musicians, though he was deaf. So already deafness should be an obstacle to him being great in a field that requires you to be able to hear. Because we call him great because we're able to hear what he has been able to produce, but he can't even hear it, right? And it's also believed that he has one of those disabilities that is known as what we call learning disabilities. He was dyslexic. He had dyslexia. We'll look at that ahead. And he also had ADHD, one of the disabilities that can also impair learning. But he was able to triumph and become one of the world's greatest musicians of all time. Secondly, there's a lady called Agatha Christie. I'm sure if you were a reader, then you surely know Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is renowned for having written 100 million of her books have been sold throughout the world. And yet, she was known to be dyslexic. A dyslexic person is a disability that gives you trouble with reading. They have difficulties reading. So she was dyslexic. And yet, she wrote books that sold up to 100 million copies, though being dyslexic. So there's really no limitation. There's just a limited mindset, right? We know Tom Cruise. I'm sure most of us know Tom Cruise. If you know Mission Impossible, the movie Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise also dyslexic, right? Dyslexia is one of the most common learning disabilities. Tom Cruise is dyslexic. He has dyslexia, severe dyslexia, such that even for his movie scripts, somebody has to read them out to him because he can't read. And yet, he is a superstar. He was able to, his greatness was able to be expressed, right? And the world is enjoying what he's producing today. We have others too. We have people like Thomas Edison. This is my favorite character. As a parent, I use this character a lot. Whenever I want to encourage my children about making mistakes, I use the example of Thomas Edison because it's a famous story that when trying to invent the light bulb, he failed 999 times. I don't know how true that is, but it's told that he failed so many hundreds of times, but yet he kept on going, right? That is the spirit of someone who loves learning. That's what we're going to look at ahead. Thomas Edison is actually renowned for having invented the light bulb. So we have lights because of what Thomas Edison did. And yet, he also had a learning disability, right? When he was young, actually, he was put out of school, and the story says that he was put out of school saying that he can't learn, that they can't teach him because he had a learning disability, so the teacher couldn't teach him. And the story says that his mother actually took up teaching him. So imagine the role of the parents. So imagine that if this mother had just closed the book on him and said, okay, go and learn carpentry or something, didn't even bother to try. But because she had a mindset that enabled her to keep going, she was able to help harness and express the potential he had inside of him. He invented the light bulb and so many other things that we enjoy today. And guess what? Albert Einstein. I'm sure we all know Albert Einstein, right? Albert Einstein is a famous scientist, so famous, such that when you're smart, they actually call you Einstein, right? So he's so famous for being so smart, for having done great things in science, and yet he had a learning disability. Einstein is known for having, he's the world's greatest mathematician till date, I believe, and his brain is being studied even till now, I think, because he was such a genius, right, in maths. But guess what? He's known to have had dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a learning disability that causes a person to have difficulties with maths. And yet Albert Einstein, who had dyscalculia, is the greatest mathematician of all time. Why? Because the potential was expressed. It was preserved and expressed, right? There was a belief that he could, and because of that, he kept on going. He also had dysgraphia, and he also had the all-famous dyslexia. Isaac Newton is another one. Those who did science will know Isaac Newton. We actually use the symbol Newton to calculate in physics. And Isaac Newton is also said to have had a learning disability, right? He was said to be failing drastically, during his school days, and yet he discovered, I think it's gravity, right? He discovered gravity, and we are talking of him today. George Washington, the 5th American president, had dyslexia. Dyslexia is so popular, right? He was dyslexic as well. And due to his dyslexia, you could have thought that, hey, he struggled through school, maybe he would, how can anything come of this one? So when we label children as dull, as dumb, as blockhead, it can end up causing that child to believe that they are not capable of doing anything great. So it only takes one person, and the best person to do this is the child's parent, right? It takes a believing parent to be able to identify, harness, and help express the great potential that is in their child, regardless of the challenges that that child may encounter along the way on their academic journey. Okay? Great. Okay, so why is it important that parents be equipped to help a struggling child? I've really brushed on some of the reasons why. It's important for you to be equipped with knowledge, because the why determines the how. Those who've worked with me know that I use this all the time, because your why is what determines your how, right? So imagine that you have a car, you have car trouble. You don't know why your car is acting up, and you just immediately take maybe oil and you start pouring into the, where to pour oil. And that's not what's wrong with the car. The car still won't start. So you'll be up and down spending energy when you should have harnessed your energy to first of all figure out, why am I having car trouble? When you figure out why you have car trouble, then you can be able to address. So the why determines the how. When you do not know where challenges could come from on a child's academic journey, you cannot even begin to solve it. You're going to keep struggling, and the child's self-esteem is going to keep getting drained. The second reason why you need to be equipped to help a struggling child is because school experiences play an important role in the development of self-perception, and it can have powerful long-term effects on a child's self-esteem. If you've ever met someone whose self-esteem is so damaged, right? They can't even look up, they don't think that they're capable of anything great. They always settle for less than they deserve because they don't think they deserve anything good, right? So self-esteem is crucial, and the school experiences are very important because children spend a lot of time in school. Imagine going to school for 9 months out of 12 months in a year. And imagine if those experiences are always negative. Imagine being labeled by your teacher every day as dull. Imagine being mocked by your classmates every day because of your academic performance. Imagine being average all the time and never getting praise or any recognition for what you're doing, right? So school experiences play a very important role in the development of what we call self-perception, how you see yourself, how you perceive yourself, right? Because self-perception also plays a great role into in how much a child believes they can accomplish, right? So it matters. The third reason why you need to be equipped with knowledge is so as to avoid misinterpretation. Excuse me. Avoid misinterpretation or misplaced expectations. This is one of the most common things that we encounter. As a parent, it's one of the most common things I encounter. Sorry, excuse me. One of the most common things I encounter is misplaced expectations. One of the things I talk about all the time is how parents need to adjust their expectations. But not just parents, teachers, school owners, caregivers, expecting more than a child can give. Misinterpreting a child who is struggling academically for being a lazy child, right? Because a child who struggles academically will not be motivated to keep learning. So they're going to come off as lazy. But when you don't understand that this child has actually lost interest because of their struggles, you will tend to say this child is stupid, this child is lazy. That's the most common. We call them lazy because we think that they just don't want to try because they are lazy. But guess what? Every child is born eager to learn. Every child is born with a natural love for learning. But what happens is, along the way, their experiences either boost their love for learning, which is what I'm trying to get you here to do to help your child accomplish, or their experiences discourage the child from trying to learn more. So that's why it's important for you to know exactly what to do, right? Let's get into it. So why do some children struggle or decline academically? If you're just joining us, you are welcome. I am Dr. Jennifer Nziboti. I am a parenting coach and the convener of this Back to School Without Stress webinar. Okay, so if you're just joining us, I've been sharing on why it's important for parents to actually do the work to learn what challenges could come up along the line of their child's academic journey. So we're going to begin to look at why some children actually struggle or why they even begin to decline. Because let's face it, not every child struggles from the beginning. Some actually start off really well, but along the line, they begin to take a downward turn, right? And as a parent, it can be a real source of concern because my child used to be an A-grade student. Suddenly, it's at the bottom of the class. What's happening? And suddenly you start thinking maybe the child is having bad friends, or you start thinking of all the other things. And sometimes some parents may never even get to think about that it could be an academic, it could be a problem with the child's academic ability to thrive, right? So you need to understand, let's look at the challenges. What challenges may come up that could cause a child to begin to struggle, to keep struggling, or to begin to decline academically. So the very first reason why a child may struggle academically or begin to decline academically is because of a learning incompatibility. This is very common, but also very little is known about this particular challenge because we are just not aware of the fact that people learn differently, right? Everyone here gathered tonight learns differently. Yes, there'll be some who learn the same way, but usually you need to put at the back of your mind that everybody learns differently. There are four main learning styles. They've been grouped into four. There are four main learning styles that are used, most popularly. Four of them, right? And a learning incompatibility being one of the key reasons why some children struggle or begin to decline is important because it's imagine you being taught in Chinese, though you're an English speaker. What will you get at the end of that lesson? Nothing. You're going to go back empty. You're going to struggle and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to become anxious. You're going to start feeling there's something wrong with you, especially if they keep telling you that you are not getting it because there's something wrong with you. What's wrong with you? Why can't you get it? 1 + 1 is 2. What's hard? What's hard with that? Right? That's the outlook we usually have. That's how we respond to a child who can't seem to get the fact that 1 potato plus 1 potato gives 2 potatoes. How can't you get it? Right? Imagine being taught in Chinese, though you are an English speaking person. You'll be there all day smiling, but you learn nothing. I may be laughing, but it's not funny because for that child, it is a true source of frustration. For that parent that has to struggle to teach that child, frustration. For that teacher that can't get why that child is just not getting it, even though they've explained every way they know how, frustration. And guess what? You are more likely to teach your child. You will naturally teach people according to how you understand best, right? How you teach naturally will most likely be how you learn. So imagine the parent whose learning style is different from their child's learning style, trying to teach their child, help them with their homework. Frustration, because the parent is doing it one way and the child just can't get it, right? I always tell the story of how I overheard a parent in my neighborhood. I don't know them. I could just hear them screaming so loud. And I think the parent was trying to help their little boy, I think in class 1 or so, with his homework. And I kept on hearing, 1 + 1 égale 2. And when the parent would teach and explain, and then it's the child's turn to reproduce what they've been taught, the child can't. It was the most traumatic experience I have had, just hearing what was happening, right? I don't know if it was this child's parent. I don't know if it was the child's home teacher. I don't know who it was, but I just know, I could just imagine what that child was going through. You're being taught something that is apparently simple for every other person. It's so simple for everybody. Why can't I get it? What's wrong with me? That's what the child begins to think, that there's something wrong with me. Why are my peers, my juniors are even getting it and I am still here? And kids who have learning incompatibilities will fall behind. You may have their sibling catching up with them in the same class. You can imagine what that does for their self-esteem, especially in an environment where that child is continuously told that, hey, look at your junior brother doing it better than you, and you're here still struggling. So the child ends up thinking, something must be wrong with me. So there are 4 key learning styles. We have the visual, we have the auditory, kinesthetic, and the reading writing learners. These are the 4 key learning styles. We're going to get into that tomorrow. So please stay tuned. Tomorrow we're going to look at the different learning styles, how to figure out which learning style you have and your child has, and how to use that knowledge to help your child learn effectively. Okay? So what's the impact of having a learning incompatibility? When a child learns differently from how they are taught, how does it affect their academic journey? Remember I said a learning incompatibility is like being taught in Chinese, though you speak English. You don't know Chinese, you speak English. You get nothing, right? How would you identify if your child may be having a learning incompatibility? The very first thing you may notice is the fact that, number 1, this child will struggle to keep up with their peers, right? So if you're a teacher, every other person in that class has already gotten it. But this child is always the last to get it, or this child still doesn't get it. The child keeps falling behind in their studies. You have moved on to multiplication, this child is still struggling with addition. You've moved on to spelling 4-letter words, and this child is still struggling, with the initial sounds, right? So this can lead to feelings of frustration, anxiety, and low self-esteem, especially low self-esteem. So you have a child that is constantly crying, constantly anxious, about homework, about school, about going to school, and is falling behind in their studies or in their academic performance. Think about the possibility of learning incompatibility. If your child is struggling to keep up, the child is always behind their peers. If the child is constantly frustrated, angry, anxious, shying away from anything education, but every other thing the child is okay. When it comes to school, the child shies away and you beat and shout saying, "Oh, lazy boy, lazy girl." No, please. Please change your approach. This child, think about it, right? We naturally will shy away from things that we find difficult. Okay? If we are drawn to areas where we thrive. Everybody likes to win. Children also like to win. So if I find out that every time I'm doing homework with my mom or dad, it's constant yelling, screaming because I can't get it that have taught me 10 times, the obvious result is that the next time I'll not be willing because I don't like that experience. Nobody likes to learn under stress and duress. Nobody likes to be called stupid or dull. So if that's what I get because I try to when it comes to books, it's always a negative experience. The child will naturally begin to not want to go in that direction. The second thing you can look out for to identify if your child may have a learning incompatibility is the fact that your child will not be motivated to learn. These are children, you have to struggle to get them out the door in the morning. These are children who struggle with homework. They hide it from you. They don't want you to know they have homework at all. They would rather go to school without their homework than struggle over it. These are children who in class may not want to write. Right? They don't want to write. They don't want to participate. Ask questions and they're quiet. They are just not willing. They have lost their interest. They've lost motivation. They become disengaged from the learning process and they lose interest in that. They'll rather play and do everything. They do well in sports, they do well in everything, but when it comes to classwork, they don't want. Please don't call them lazy, right? Your child may have lost interest, and it could be a learning incompatibility. The third way you can recognize children with this kind of problem is the fact that the child's ability to comprehend and remember what they're being taught. So the child will struggle not just to understand, but to remember it. So maybe you've finally gotten them to say 1 + 1 = 2. You come back 1 week later, and it's as if you have to start from square one. The child can't seem to retain what they are being taught because how memory works is that when you assimilate, it's easier to remember. When you've understood the concept, it's easier to reproduce it when you're asked. But when you don't understand the concept, the child will struggle to give it back to you because they didn't understand, they just memorized it, for example. I shared today on my social media handles that my passion for this particular subject came because God birthed it because I have an atypical. One of my kids is a kinesthetic learner. And the thing about kinesthetic learners is that our system doesn't cater to those kind of learners. You need to go the extra mile. Most parents I've met with kids who have real academic challenges. By the time we went into it, we discovered that they were kinesthetic learners as well. Those children really struggle in the system because the teaching styles usually don't cater to their needs. They have specific needs. We'll look at that tomorrow. And the needs are those kind of needs that usually are fought in the classroom. These are kids who can't sit. These are kids who need to move around every now and then. And guess what? In a classroom, if you should stand when it's not time to stand, you get punished. If you're fidgeting, you get punished, right? If you are always, you can't focus, you get punished. So these kids really struggle. And we'll look at that as we go ahead. So you have a child who has difficulty understanding and giving back what they are being taught. These are kids who most likely have a learning incompatibility. Difficulty understanding complex concepts, memorizing information, and applying what they have learned. That's where you catch them. Okay? So you've taught the concept, you've taught the lesson, and you try to twist it a little bit and the child is lost. So the child has difficulty, reasoning in line with the concept that you just taught them. It may be that the child has a learning incompatibility. It may just be that your child has a learning incompatibility. And these children, the signs you have to look out for, they have poor memory of what they have learned. They have difficulty applying what has been taught. They may lose interest, become anxious, frustrated, have low self-esteem, right? And fourthly, they may suddenly decline when they change schools or when they change levels. I've had children or parents come to me for children who transition from, the last, I think, grade 6 or grade 7 of the primary level. Once they go to Form 1, they begin to decline. This is the thing. When a child transitions from one level of the academic ladder to the next, what happens is not only does the bulk of the material increase, but also the methods of teaching are different. In primary school, it's most likely that you could have, some singing, some dancing, and there'll be, they actually do a lot more of illustrations than they do at the secondary level. It becomes more complex at the secondary level, such that, sorry about that. It becomes more complex at the secondary level. So you have a child who suddenly goes up and then begins to go down. Even though they were an A grade student, even though they were thriving at some level, or for some kids, when they move from nursery to primary, that's when their problems begin to reveal themselves. This could be because, like I said, primary level, think about the nursery level. They dance, they sing everything they're learning. Primary level, suddenly you have to sit still, you have to copy notes, you have to look on the board. But nursery level, they sing, they try to demonstrate all what they're. If that's just a kinesthetic learner, when they move from nursery to primary, that's when they start having issues. So sometimes it may just be that as your child, maybe a change of teacher. Teachers have different teaching styles, okay? They have different teaching styles. So if your child is a new teacher, goes to a new school, suddenly begins to drop, it could be that the way they're being taught is not how they learn. That's why it's important to know the different styles. Okay, I'm sorry I can't add anyone right now because it's going to cause me to interrupt the lesson. Okay, so I've given you 4 ways you could identify, 4 signs that you could look out for to pick up if your child may possibly have a learning incompatibility. So next, we're going to look at learning disabilities. Okay, individuals with learning disabilities. What are learning disabilities? There are several of them. We're going to look at the most popular ones. At the beginning of this session, I shared with you about dyslexia. It's one of the most common learning disabilities. Okay, people with learning disabilities are especially vulnerable to a low self-concept. Because why? They have a disability. One thing I always say, or I shared recently on social media, is the fact that disability does not mean inability. When some parents hear your child is disabled so and so way, they pack the box and they're gone. That simply means that, just let the child be. No school anymore, no trying anymore, all efforts just cease. No, disability does not mean inability. It simply means different ability. Okay? It simply means that this child, this person needs more support. You're going to have to do extra for that child. You're going to have to do a little bit more to get that child to where the others are. That's simply what it means. We started by sharing a good number of great people who have done great things in their time, even though they had learning disabilities. My favorite, Thomas Edison, because every time I see the light bulb, I think about the fact that in spite of all the obstacles he had, in spite of being pushed out of school, saying that he was on yet because he had someone that believed in him, he was able to give us light. So disability simply means differently able. It simply means your child will need more support to get to where the others are and even go beyond that. Okay, so children with learning disabilities, people with learning disabilities will struggle with a low self-concept. That is why you, the parent, I repeat, you are the most important piece on your child's academic journey. What you know and how well you use what you know can actually help your child transform their obstacles into stepping stones. So any child who experiences a learning disability, who has a learning disability, will experience academic challenges, and it can be draining for their self-esteem, except they have a parent like you who knows what to do. That's why I encourage us to get as many parents here as possible, because you may be struggling with your child, thinking your child is lazy, thinking they are dull, thinking they are so many other things, not knowing that it's just because they have some issues that would warrant more support than the next child. We can't go through all the learning disabilities today, but I'll try to go through the most popular ones, right? We'll start with dyslexia. What's dyslexia? Dyslexia is a learning disability that affects your reading skills. I've had people reach out to me with children as old as 10 that can't read. Okay, I've had 10. I think my oldest so far is 10. Can't read at all. You have 10. I've had 8. I've had 10 and 8. I think it was the oldest I've got to that. I think I've had a 12, 13-year-old that can't read. So dyslexia. So just imagine what such a child has been through in our African context. A child who can read, whose juniors begin to read faster than them. Imagine what such a child may have gone through, may still be going through, just because they do not understand that this child has a problem. Learning disability, the child did nothing to have a learning disability. It's just the way their brain is formed. Okay? Dyslexia is a learning disability that affects your reading skills. And children with dyslexia who have difficulty recognizing words. You've taught the child is, IS, 50 times. The next time the child sees it, silence. It's frustrating if you don't know. That's why I said knowledge helps patience. What you know can help you be more patient, because you know that my child is the purpose. It's not doing this to frustrate me. It's not about me. It's about your child. It's not about you, the parents. It's about your child. So what you know can help you tremendously to be more patient with your child, right? When I'm working with my kinesthetic learner, my second boy, right? The way I handle, sometimes takes me 2 hours to get through homework, and I have 4. Is it easy? No. But what helps my patience, because I know that it's because he is also struggling, right? He's in a system that does not cater to the way he learns. And I am his hope. One of those people that can actually help him get along. I've tried to work with his teachers too. You know, each time he goes to a new class, he's one of the, I prioritize his teachers one of the others, because I know that he will need extra. So I do extra with his teachers, because I know that he's going to need that extra help. And the teacher is not going to understand that this is what this child will be going through, because I know that in our setting, even the teachers are not even aware of the different learning styles and how to address them. Okay, so this child struggles with recognizing words, reading fluently, comprehending what they are reading. Dyslexia. The second one is dyscalculia. We saw that Albert Einstein had dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a learning disability that affects math skills. You know that child? There are some of us here, I'm sure, who probably in primary school, you know, maybe you failed maths primary school, failed maths secondary school. I'm not saying that you necessarily had dyscalculia, but just maybe. Maybe you just have dyscalculia. Maybe till now you still struggle with punching numbers. You may have dyscalculia, right? It's actually a problem. It's not as if you just can't get it, but you're having a learning disability, right? It doesn't mean it's a sentence. You can actually overcome it. There are strategies to act on people like this. So dyscalculia is a learning disability that affects a person's math skills. Children with dyscalculia have difficulty understanding math concepts. They struggle with maths. Memorizing math facts is a problem. Performing calculations is traumatic because they have difficulties, you know, just getting math. There's dysgraphia, also very common. You have a child who is 10 maybe, and even the way they grip their pen, they can't even grip a pen. They write, as we call them, foul scratch. They can't write, and you're like, there are children who have suffered in our system because we lack knowledge. Knowledge is powerful. There are some children who have, I'm sure even some of us adults here may have some problems. I remember when I was teaching on the benefits of reading with children and developing a child's reading skills, I had an adult reach out to me, and she shared with me the fact that as an adult, she can't read. In spite of everything she's done, she can't read. An adult, she really, really wants to learn to read. She may be dyslexic, so you can imagine when I talked to her, it was heartbreaking because she has been through a lot. She went to school. couldn't continue because she couldn't read. So she had to drop out at some level. And the teasing, the mocking, your doll, your this, your that. So it can actually impair a person's potential just because they end up believing that something is wrong with them. Dysgraphia has to do with, disability that affects writing skills. They have difficulties in gripping a pen. They have difficulties, writing letters. They write funny, okay? I'm not saying everyone that writes, I write very bad, right? My writing, I don't have dysgraphia, but my writing grew worse when I became a doctor. Doesn't mean I have dysgraphia. I'm not saying everyone that writes badly has dysgraphia, but these people actually have issues, not just with writing, but also spelling and organizing their thoughts in writing, right? So they have a thought, but taking it from thought to writing, there's a breach, there's a gap. That's dysgraphia. Okay, so they may be thinking maybe the teacher is dictating. And the child can hear and understand what's being said. Maybe it's even spelling in their mind. But now going from what they are hearing or what they are thinking to what they want to write, there is a disconnect. That's dysgraphia. Okay, there's ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects attention and behavior, right? So not every child who is distracted and everywhere all over the place is just too playful. No, it may be the child has what we call ADHD. And ADHD is classified as a learning disability because it's difficult to learn when you're all over the place, right? Learning will need some level of focus and concentration. Okay, and these children have difficulties paying attention. They have difficulties staying organized. They are very scattered. They have difficulties controlling their impulses, emotional outbursts. It can actually be a barrier for their learning. The next one I want us to look at is autism. Autism, very common, it's becoming more and more popular. But guess what? Autism has been there from time past. There are actually people who are well renowned. I think it's Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. One of them, I think, is autistic. I don't remember who, but autism is very popular. It's becoming more and more popular. And it also affects a child's ability to interact socially, to communicate, and also their behavior. They have difficulties with social skills, with language development, and repetitive behavior is called styming, right? The child is constantly, they call it styming. So there are different grades of autism. We're not going to go into that today because it's going to take us very far off course. I'll see if we can be able to address that tomorrow, but we may not be able to handle learning disabilities during this webinar. There's a lot to teach and the time is not enough, okay? So we have auditory processing disorder, we have visual processing disorder. I won't get into those. So there are different kinds of learning disabilities. I've just listed the most common ones. If you remember dysgraphia, which has to do with writing, dyscalculia has to do with maths, dyslexia has to do with reading, ADHD has to do with attention and focus and all of that. And we have autism spectrum disorders, ASD, which has to do with social behavior, ability to language development and repetitive behaviors. So if your child may be autistic, it can also affect their academic journey. So there are different, there's mild, there's moderate, there's severe autism, right? Mild usually can go through the system and not really struggle much. But when you have moderate, severe, you will need extra help. So remember, disability does not equal inability. It just means differently able, okay? So the third reason why some children may struggle is due to poor study habits, lack of executive function skills. What's executive function? Many of us are not familiar with the word executive function. It's completely new. Some people are just not aware that there's something called executive function skills, but they exist and they are very, very important, right? So executive function skills are a set of skills that every person, when you have those skills well developed, it helps you to write. I, as a person, I use executive function skills a lot because I multitask. A person who lacks executive function skills will have difficulties multitasking because multitasking has to do with planning, has to do with time management, has to do with working memory, okay? Being able to remember that, this has to go here and this should help me be able to accomplish that. Working memory, inhibition, being able to, blind distraction so you can focus on the task, right? To have what they call goal-directed persistence, executive function skills. So when a child lacks executive function skills, which are, like I said, a set of skills that has to do with time management, with planning, staying organized, being able to focus on the task. There's some kids that when they go to study, maybe at secondary level, they can't sit still, they get distracted, they just go off and do something else. My child can't sit, my child this, that. Lack of executive function skill. So not every child that lacks focus and concentration has autism. No. Not every child that has issues with, concentration and being organized has ADHD. No, not necessarily. Now, there's something that we call screen autism. It's becoming more and more popular. Why? Because we have screens that are on the rise, and children are spending lots and lots of time in front of the screens. A child who has a screen addiction problem will struggle academically because screen addiction, amongst other things, also affects, their executive function. It affects their ability to focus, affects their ability to concentrate, affects their ability to manage their emotions, and these children actually are going to have a range of issues that could resemble autism. They have poor social behavior. Okay, so screens will affect a child's academic performance. So their children will go in for assessment thinking they're autistic, and they go there and say, your child is not autistic. Guess what? It could be the screen. And most of them come to me, and by the time we go into it, we discover that it's the screen. And by the time we start work, you see the children picking up, because screens can induce an autism-like kind of appearance, because screens actually, trigger those negative effects that will cause your child to begin to behave as if they are autistic. So when I teach about screens, when I talk about screens extensively, and some people come back to tell me, oh no, my child is learning on screens. What are you saying? Screens are good for academics. I'm not saying screens are bad. I never said that. Screens have a negative effect when they're not used right, when they're not used with regulation, when they're not used within the framework of what is acceptable, what is okay, what is appropriate, depending on the age of the child. When I tell parents that below 18 months, your child has no business with the screen, you start hearing stuff like, oh, my child is learning from there, my child learned ABC from there. And when I tell you that children don't really learn from screens, they memorize. Memorization is not learning. It's different. Learning has to do with assimilation and understanding what's being taught, understanding the concept to reproduce. Remember we said that one of the ways you can identify a learning incompatibility is when a child cannot understand the concept and be able to reproduce it, right? So by the time you change, you go A, B, C, tell the child, come back D, C, D, C, B, A. The child can't, because the concept does not learn. The child just memorized the sequence. So the child is not really learning, okay? So executive function skills has to do with working memory, inhibition, task initiation, time management, planning, goal-directed persistence. All these things are important for study habits, right? As your child goes higher on the academic ladder, if they lack executive function skills, they will struggle. Because what you want as a parent is for your child to become what they call a self-regulated learner. Self-regulated learners are learners who are able to plan their work, able to, after school I should do my homework without being told, who are goal-oriented. Children who know what they're going after. Not that every night you chase your child, homework time, every night from nursery to secondary level, you're still chasing your child for homework. Your child is not a self-regulated learner. So you have to try to get your child to the point where they're able to lead themselves academically. And that happens when your child has a natural love for learning. We'll look at that as we go ahead. So poor study habits, such as procrastination. I'll do my project tomorrow. And before the child knows the deadline is here, the child didn't do it because the child kept on putting it off. That's where goal-directed persistence comes in. Lack of organization. The child can't decide, should I do maths first before I study English? Your child has gone to a level where they do 12 subjects, and your child can't be able to organize themselves to study. Can't know, okay, I'll study maths for 15 minutes today, and I'll do English, and I'll do, the child is disorganized. It will affect your child's academic performance. Poor time management. The child plays and forgets to study. The child, spends too much time on one subject and leaves the other one out. These things make it difficult for children to succeed academically. And parents, as well as teachers, can help children develop these skills, right? Now, the thing is with executive function skills is that how you parent your child will also affect the level of executive function, right? Parenting strategies that are very high on fear actually work against the development of executive function skills, because the part of the brain that actually regulates or that is responsible for executive function is what we call the prefrontal cortex, which is where the child has high decision making and all of those things. When there is fear, this part of the brain shuts, and this constant fear, please, constant fear. So, and a child in an environment of constant, what we call a child in an environment where the parents are like dictators, constant yelling, constant beating. Even in the classroom, that's why I said in the classroom, the whip has no place. Because when there is fear, there can't be learning. Because for learning to really be effective, for your child to become a self-regulated learner, it needs an environment that encourages your child to take initiative for their own learning. So your parenting style matters, right? How much screens your child is exposed to matters. It would affect their ability to lead themselves academically. It would affect their ability to study. So there is a place for learning how to parent, because most of us, how we were raised is the reason why we parent the way we parent. We don't know how to do it any other way. That's just all we know to do. And you don't realize you're doing is harming your child. What you're doing, how you're raising that child, how you correct them, how you address them, may actually go on to impact or impair their academic performance, because it's going to inhibit their executive function skill. Okay, so poor study habits. And we're going to go quickly so we can get strategies for developing intelligence. So we have lack of motivation. We've looked at this already. That's another reason why a child may begin to decline academically. A lack of motivation. We said that, or I've said that, when a child has repeated challenges with their academics, maybe due to a learning incompatibility, or due to a learning disability, or due to a poor learning environment, or any other thing, that those factors that contribute to academic performance, this child will gradually lack motivation. Like I said, every person is always curious and excited to go in an area where they know they can win. But when a child keeps meeting failure, what happens? The child stops trying. There's an experiment that was conducted where rats were placed in a glass box and food was placed outside the glass box, okay? And these rats will, when they get hungry, they're going to run to try to go get the food, and they'll hit on the glass and they go back. They try again, hit on the glass and they go back. They did that severally during the course of the first day. So over the night while they were sleeping, the box was taken out, the glass box, so that, they couldn't see that it was a glass box. They just knew there was something there, that though they could see the food, for some reason they couldn't get to the food. So they kept on obstacle, obstacle, obstacle. The next day, by morning, they took off the glass, while they were sleeping, they took off the glass box. And the rats couldn't tell that that thing had been removed, but they just never tried to go get the food when they were hungry. Why? Because when you keep meeting an obstacle over and over and over, it will eventually affect the child's motivation to keep learning. Okay, that's why the environment is important. The next reason why a child may decline is an inappropriate learning environment. The learning environment for a child, there are several factors that contribute to a child's learning environment. Okay, the parental involvement, level of parental involvement, how stable the environment is, how much access they have to resources that can help their learning. Okay, these are all issues, these are all aspects that will end up impacting how your child learns. Poverty, homelessness, constant violence, constant discouragement, constant environment where a child is not encouraged, a child is not supported, can end up affecting the child's motivation to learn. When the environment is not appropriate for learning, the learner is not motivated to keep on with their learning. Okay, another factor is the fact that emotional or behavioral problems. This somehow is a bit related to what we discussed earlier, which was the ADHD, learning disabilities. But not really. This is a whole category of its own, because emotional problems here could also mean something happens to the child that has a great emotional, inflicts great emotional trauma on the child. You know, a child in a situation in school where they're being bullied, for example. A child who has lost a loved one, a child whose parents are going through a divorce, a child, who has been abused in one way, who is being abused verbally, who is being abused physically, a child who is being abused sexually as well. When a child suddenly begins to decline, there are certain questions we must ask, right? You need to go through these things. It may not be a learning disability, it may not be a learning incompatibility, it may not be a lack of motivation due to, some of the other things. It could be that there is something in the child's environment still that is impacting their learning. Screens as well, behavioral problems, screens. Children who cannot regulate their behavior. It's one of the things excessive screens affects is a child's ability to self-regulate. That's why they have violent tantrums. Children who are addicted to screens are very violent. They are very violent. So, and that will also affect the academics, because in class, you can't be able to. You're going to struggle socially when you have, when you lack the ability to regulate your emotions. As the child keeps growing higher, that violence will end up causing them to have a turbulent social environment, and it's going to affect their learning. Okay, the last level of challenges the child may encounter that could affect their academics is health problems. Dr. Fomenki will come on later to tell us more about this. Health problems. Now, health problems could also be the fact that a child is chronically ill, constantly in the hospital. Children who have maybe asthma or epilepsy or something, health problems. A child with constant health problems will need extra support, because you need to, a sickler, as another example. They are constantly in the hospital, constantly having bouts of illness that causes them to skip out on lessons and, always fall behind their peers. These children will need extra support. The next level of health problems is nutrition related to health problems, because nutrition is a key factor when it comes to academic performance. I won't go too deep because Dr. Fomenki is going to teach us extensively on that tonight. But nutrition not only affects your child's brain and performance, but also their health. Because when a child's nutrition is not adequate, the child could be constantly ill. Their immune system is weakened, and they are more vulnerable to pick up diseases. I won't go into that because Dr. Fomenki is going to come on to teach us more on that. Okay, so I don't know if we have any questions, but please note your questions. We're going to look at them at the very end of this session. Let's look at how to boost intelligence. I hope you're getting value. I hope that you are being enlightened on reasons or areas. If you have a child who's struggling, I hope that by this point of this session, you've been able to pick up a few things. You've been able to have some sense of direction as to where their problem may be coming from. Tomorrow we're going to go deeper. Okay, whatever you do, don't miss tomorrow's session. It's going to be far loaded than tonight's session, because this is just an introduction. Strategies to boost intelligence. Most of us have been, grown up, we grew up to believe that intelligence is fixed. I remember in boarding school, there was one of my classmates. He was top from the start to the end, always at the top. But I finally got to beat him at the GC. Did I beat him at the GC level? I don't think I did. I don't remember if I did. But well, that's not even the point. The point is, their family, they were always in the A category, A grade category. And for some of us who were bright, but not, at that dimension, we thought that we were made to believe, or we ended up believing that it runs in their family. Well, I'm going to show you that intelligence is not fixed, okay? And even the child who has the genetic advantage, if they don't do the right things, they could still also decline. So intelligence is a complex and multifaceted aspect or concept, let me put it that way. It's multifaceted, right? And it refers to a person's ability to learn, to reason, to solve problems. When you say someone is an intelligent person, oh, that boy is so intelligent. What are you looking at? The fact that they are a quick thinker, the fact that they are able to learn stuff quickly, the fact that they are able to, reason out, solve problems. They are sharp, right? When you're actually referring to intelligence, they're able to adapt quickly. A new teacher comes and they are really on their feet and they are going ahead. So intelligence has multiple facets, right? Multiple ways, multiple things that come together for a person to be called intelligent, right? So it encompasses a wide range of brain abilities. Let me just call it that, cognitive abilities. which includes memory, attention, perception, language, and reasoning capacity, right? So intelligence has to do with memory, the ability to remember, your history, for example. I hated history. And actually, just as I began to study the different learning styles because of my child, I actually found out the kind of learner I am and why I could never thrive with history. I'm a visual learner. History has nothing to do with visuals. In secondary school, I read textbooks. I can't read notebooks because I cannot just thrive with notes, just writing it. It's boring. I don't get the concept. But if I can see the concept, it sticks. If I'm in class, but history has to do with memorizing style of notes. So people who thrive in history are either auditory learners or reading writing learners. They do well with that because visual learners need you to be able to, demonstrate using diagrams. They need to be able to see the concepts. That's why I could never thrive in history. I actually registered history GC and I actually dropped it off because I couldn't. I hated history because I couldn't get it, right? I didn't want to cram. I prefer to understand. I don't want to cram. Most people who did history were crammers. They were good at memorizing, just cramming. I love to understand concepts. I don't like cramming without understanding. So history was a no-no for me. So intelligence is your ability to memorize stuff, your attention capacity, to focus on a task, perception, to be able to understand concepts and understand what they are referring to and how it applies to whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Language, reasoning, right? Studies have shown that only 50% of intelligence depends on your genetics, right? That's good news. Imagine if it was 100% genetics, then then some people have no where nobody has ever passed the GCE before. People all dropped out of school, and you're like, "There's no hope for me." No, just 50% is genetically determined. So research has shown 50%. There's a whole other half that has to do with other factors, right? So imagine that you have that 50%. It means you don't have it all yet. There's something extra that you need to put to that to be able to remain at the top. Like I said, even the child who seems to have the genetic advantage, if they do not do the other things are not in place, they could also find themselves going down. That's why a child that has always been at the top could get to a certain point and begin to decline. So research has shown that intelligence is not fixed. It can be improved through education and training, right? There are strategies for boosting intelligence. There are things that you do, that you may be doing, that is working against your child's intelligence. Just like there are things that you can do that can intelligence. So intelligence is not fixed, okay? So cognitive training programs, there are things that you can begin to do more of as a parent, as a caregiver, as a teacher, that can actually help that struggling child to begin to excel. So it's not about you don't read your books. It's not about, oh, you're not focusing in class. No, it's not just that, right? There are other things that need to be in place for intelligence to be enhanced. We're going to look at some of those things. So intelligence may be complex, but there is something you can do to improve on the level at which your child is at the moment. Let's look at strategies to boost intelligence, right? I'm sure that when we're going to go through some of these points, it's going to be a wow moment for most of us. As a medical doctor, right? When I started my journey of parenting coaching, as a parent even, there's some things I found out that I expected as a doctor I would know. It's not obvious. You can't know everything, right? That's why we have different specialties even in medicine, because you can't know everything. So there is still a whole lot to learn. And I'm always amazed at, the things that you would think a doctor would know. I've received parents who have taken their kids to meet with doctors about, certain challenges they're having. And, they didn't really get the solutions there because the doctors were looking at it from a medical perspective. Meanwhile, what they needed were strategies from the home that could help boost those areas or help with the behavior issues that we're having, or maybe focus. I have a program that helps children who have screen autism to be able to rehabilitate children with screen autism. Okay, and the results are amazing. These are kids that they've sent to also thinking that they're autistic. They get the doctor says they're not autistic. So what do I do with my child then? And they don't know what to do, But there are strategies that can actually help rehabilitate a child. Strategies that can boost intelligence, that can help a child who has been tagged average or below average to rise. Okay? So the very first thing you need to do to boost intelligence is to encourage curiosity. That child that keeps asking questions. The child that, Mama, why, why are there many ants here? Where do the ants come from? Why does I used to ask a lot of questions when I was young? And it's been said that the person who asks questions is actually an intelligent person. But in our African context, we get irritated when our kids ask questions. We get angry. We get upset. You're tired. You don't want to answer. You don't even know. Instead of saying, be humble. I don't know. You don't know everything as a parent. Instead of saying, let's find out together. My kids and I, we have the habit of going to Kido. Kido is the child version of, the child-friendly version of Google. And one day my kids asked me, why is the firefly shining at night? I didn't know. I had to learn from Kido, sorry. They asked me about lightning and thunder. Mommy, I didn't know. As Madam Doctor, I don't know everything, right? I did physics, but I just didn't know that. Why does lightning come before thunder? I know that, but there were some things that we actually went on the site and we learned together, right? When you let your child know that you don't know everything, and that curiosity should actually stir you to go and learn, that's how you raise a child that loves to learn. Instead of shutting down their curiosity, make room for your child to become more curious. Teach your child to be respectful with their curiosity. That's how you raise a child that, whose intelligence is enhanced. Don't shut down the questions. Encourage the question. Encourage them to ask questions. Not just take and just sit quiet. Hey, don't ask me. Do it because I've said so. Mama, why are you saying that we should carry the water in this bucket? Don't you think, hey, close your mouth. I'm your mother. You don't tell me what to do. I'm the one that makes the rules here. Sometimes your child may actually be giving you an idea that is far smarter than what you were trying to say, because we're not humble. We have this thing that causes us to react against curiosity, and it shuts down intelligence, because eventually you raise a child that doesn't ask questions. And when you don't ask questions, it doesn't push you to go the extra mile. People who discover things are people who ask questions. The people who find out, why does an egg fall down and break? And the child takes your egg and breaks the egg. I tell parents about toddlers. The age of curiosity is the toddler years. That's when curiosity is at its peak. And that's usually where we kill it first. We actually kill it before it's even developed, when they are toddlers. Because the toddler child they want to know everything. And how they learn is because of their curious, their curiosity helps them to learn, helps their brain to develop. So when you carry your toddler and you plant them in front of a TV screen and you force them to sit there, you shut down their curiosity. When you constantly, beat or yell at your toddler and try to get them to sit still when they should be moving around, you're shutting down their curiosity and you're impairing their intelligence. So a child's curiosity is crucial for their development of intelligence. So whatever you do, you have to find ways to encourage it. Ask questions to your child and also entertain their questions. Even when they challenge you, you mustn't answer them. You can tell your child, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you. I don't know. Come on, let's learn together. Let's find out together. Why, what kind of question could I ask? Why does the bulb shine? I don't even know that there's something inside tungsten or something like that. I can't remember. But it's the whole thing. So when you have a learner that asks questions, another level where curiosity skills in the classroom, Sometimes in African classroom, when you ask the teacher a question, the teacher can answer. It becomes a problem. You're challenging your teacher. That's why Africa, our problems are deep-rooted, and God is helping us. We are coming out. You ask the teacher a question, and he gets offended because he can't answer, maybe, and because he's supposed to know everything. No, as teacher, no, you shouldn't know everything. The fact that you think you know everything is a problem. That's a problem. Number one, encourage curiosity. This will help your child develop a love for learning, right? Nurture it from when they are toddlers. Harness it. It's precious. That is intelligence blooming like that. Don't shut it down. Don't. No matter what you do, don't shut it down. Time is running out. The second thing you can do with intelligence is reading. My favorite. Reading. Readers are leaders. They lead in knowledge. Knowledge is a building block for intelligence, right? And not just that, reading has been shown to stimulate several areas of a child's brain, especially reading to your child. So it's not just reading, the child reading. And when I say reading, you're going to think, oh, bring your textbooks, come and read. No, that's not what we're talking about here. Yes, that's reading, qualifies as reading. But that kind of reading is not the kind of reading where a child may find themselves wanting to engage by themselves, right? It has to be stimulating. It has to be something that triggers the child's interest. I tell parents to buy storybooks. Invest in storybooks, because storybooks, reading, if you can succeed to instill a love for reading in your child, then you may just have been able to raise a lifelong learner. People that don't go to school and stop there. There are many people who have left school, have never studied anything since then. You know why? Our system raises children who learn to pass exams. That's it. No drive for personal development. I've passed the exam, I have a job. Everything finished. You have a program like this, people actually have a repulsion for knowledge. When you have a person whose love for learning died several years ago, they're not moved when things like this are going on. You have to push and push. It is worse. It's one thing to be ignorant. Another thing to not even know that you're ignorant. That's even the worst, because you can't even help that person. You can't help. So read to your children. Encourage a love for reading. Invest in books. Read to them. And when we get to the point where they can read for themselves, make sure you furnish, their love for reading. Buy books. Some parents, the only thing they ever buy is the books for school. Apart of the book list and Bible story book, there's nothing else. You can't raise a child that loves reading like that. You can't. I promise you can't. Because textbooks are boring. I'm sorry, but they are, right? The child can only read so much of that. A reader needs variety, just like diet. Reading is like a diet, like a food diet. You need to vary it, right? I remember I share often about my 8-year-old. All my kids love reading, but my 8-year-old is the one who really reads very well. Once I bring a new pile of books, that day he doesn't even go out to play. He doesn't go anywhere. He sits down until he reads about 3 or 4. He can't move because he is so much in love with reading that he just keeps going, and he's tops of his class from as far as I can remember. So reading has a big role to play when it comes to intelligence, right? Reading to your child is an excellent way to stimulate and to boost their intelligence, because it stimulates different areas of their brain. And remember, the brain is what does the work. So you need to feed it, okay? It helps them develop language skills, improves their vocabulary, and they use all of these things in learning. So you want a child that does academically well, don't just limit yourself to the book list. Go a bit further. Invest in a library of books. Read to your child every night if you can, or at least every now and then. It's a good way to bond with your child as well. It helps them develop their brain, helps boost their intelligence. Readers are leaders. How are you want to raise a child that's at the top of their class, and all they have is their history book, is their maths book? What do you want the child to read? The child won't love reading. You have a child who's going to just read to pass. If you want a child that's curious, that loves to learn, reading is one of the things you need to get your child to be able to do. The third thing, most intelligence, is play. My favorite, before reading even, play. This is because in Africa especially, we have actually labeled play as the enemy of learning. And we've made it our mission to fight our children's playfulness instead of using it. Play is I think it's one of the most important factors when it comes to developing intelligence. Play is crucial for a child. The reason a child is playful is not because they want to play, it's because they need to play. Children learn through play. For a child, playing is learning. For you, you look at playing as an obstacle, as the reason why the child is failing. Yes, it's true that when play is not regulated, when play is not purposeful, I call it play on purpose. When play is not purposeful, it can actually work against a child's academics. When play is not varied, it can actually have a contrary effect. For example, there are kids in the village who play all day, go to the stream to carry water, and you only see them in the evening because they've been playing all day. The reason why this doesn't contribute to their intelligence is because, like I said, intelligence is multifaceted, right? It's like a buffet. You have this, a little bit of this, that, you put it together, and then you have intelligence. But play is one of the most important factors when it comes to a child's brain development, a child's intelligence. Play contributes to discipline. It contributes to emotion regulation. It contributes to social skills. It contributes to development of intelligence, like I said earlier. So make opportunities for you. You don't just have to encourage it, you have to intentionally provide opportunities for your child to play. Now, this platform can't permit to teach about play. Play is a whole other topic, right? I teach that during my courses. For example, the Building a Strong Bond with Your Child program is about to come up. We do that. We actually learn about play because when the parent knows how to use play, it's a vital tool that can actually help your child improve. I share the story constantly about my 8-year-old, even in fact, all of my kids, my 8-year-old in particular. He had a problem with his writing. And you would think that I'll buy him a writing book, you know, the writing book with the colored lines, or you would think that I will maybe, you know, have him writing, I will write well, I will write over and over to improve his writing. No, I used to play, and it worked. I used to play, and I got the result because play can be used, right? The children I work with to rehabilitate them from the negative effects of screens, we actually use play on purpose. Strategic play to develop certain aspects of their brain to help them build focus, help them build concentration, help them regulate emotions, help them build social skills. Play contributes tremendously to intelligence. It's not just about you go to the shop, you buy the electric toy cars. Not every toy is equal. I think I'll share on this in the days ahead. Not every toy is equal. So some children are going to school and they have zero educative material. Besides, once you bought books, pens, pencils, bag, school list, you know, book list, but boom, you put your full stop and you're done. No. Especially if you have a kinesthetic learner. Educative toys actually enhance learning. So you need to go a bit further, right? There are different things that help to build your child's capacity. And you can achieve that using play. You need to invest also in educative material, not just the standard textbook, the standard exercise book. You know, the child has their ball, they have, yeah, there are those things that are good, but there are other strategic things that you can get that can actually help enhance your child's learning experience, right? So play, pay attention to that. It helps develop social skills, creativity, and problem-solving skills. Play can be used to help a child improve in maths. Did you know that? Yes, a child that struggles with maths, because maths, what's maths? Maths is problem solving. Maths is critical thinking. There are certain things, certain games, certain things that you can actually have your child, you know, working on. So it's not just about extra classes. Before we go further, let me just talk on this. I have about 10 minutes to go. I'm one of those parents that does not believe in extra lessons. It's not necessary. It's not. It's not. Think about it. A child spends about 8 hours in class on a standard learning day and comes home, has another 2 hours. Guess what that does? It takes away the child's opportunity to play. Parents are what we know it. When I'm looking at your schedule, you present it to me. One of the things I check first is play, because children need. They don't have to. They need it. They need to play. Some of the behaviors we struggle with is because our children don't have room for expression. And play gives a child room to express themselves, helps the child manage. So when I remember there was a time I went to my kids' school, PTA, not about you, but we're going to learn about PTA. It's important. I went there and I had one goal to have them reinstitute break time. How can you take away a child's break? I was scandalized. My kids come home, because I have ways I get information out of them. We talk, that you share about almost everything. And the child was like, "Oh, Mama, no break today." I said, "Okay, maybe something happened." Second day, no break. Third day, no break. Fourth day, and I'm now actually becoming anxious. What's happening? Why is there no break? I don't think it's just some temporary issue. Something is wrong. And only to find out that break time was taken away because, the kids, they felt like they were, they will fall and some kind of, those things like that. And I went for PTA. My goal was to plead with them, to share with them why it is crucial. That break time is crucial. When you take away a child's break and you have them sit in class from 8 till 2, what is a child in school learning from 8 to 2? There's nothing that you need to sit in class to learn from 8 to 2 without having time to play. The thing is, when you have your child, at some point in the course of the day, the child is learning nothing anymore because the ability to focus and concentrate is already diminished. So you have them sitting as if they're in university, learning from morning till 2 without break time. Just eat briefly and they go back to learning. Learning, what are they learning for all that time? Without time to play is crucial. So I went there and I was able to, plead and have them reinstate the children's break time. So another thing you need to do is to teach critical thinking skills. We've looked at play. Now we're looking at critical thinking skills. It's another contributor to intelligence. Critical thinking has to do with a child's ability to analyze, right? Mathematics is all about analysis. In fact, much of science is analysis. And it contributes to intelligence. So some children they can't analyze. A child can, critically assess a situation because they are limited, right? So you can actually boost that using certain strategies. Critical thinking has to do with analyzing information to be able to make decisions, what we call informed decision making. A child who has critical thinking skills is able to become or eventually becomes what we call an independent thinker. I know that most of us parents, our system of parenting has to do it. I tell you what to do and you do it. That's it. You can't raise a critical thinker that way. A critical thinker is a child that is able to question the system. Teach the child to do so, but do so respectfully. But the child should be able to question the system, asking questions. Critical thinking is built through things like puzzles, for example, chess. Those are games that actually boost critical thinking skills. And there's a whole host of them, right? But you have to teach that because it also contributes to intelligence. Because the child grows up, the child gets to science, and needs to be able to analyze stuff, analyze information to make, even at the workplace, there are those who can never manage an institution because they lack critical thinking skills. To be able to manage an establishment, to be able to be a CEO, you have to have critical thinking, right? The next thing is to provide opportunities for your child to have what we call hands-on learning. For a child to be able to develop to develop intelligence, the child must have opportunities to have hands-on learning, not just I tell you, you hear, you do it. But you can also create opportunities for the child to experience what they're learning. Role play. Role playing is like acting out what you're teaching. Even at home, you can do role play. The parents are working, I tell you, try to act a small sketch, try to demonstrate with your child how this is done. Role playing, it helps provide opportunities for the child to have hands-on learning, to practicalize what they are learning. It boosts intelligence and gets the mind thinking. Encourage creativity. Now, when you look at the school curriculum, so for those of us who go to school and we just look at the classes, they are beautiful, the school uniform is cute, you bought the books, you bought the best shoes, you bought the best bag, you check the curriculum. Because there are some schools that when your child actually attends them, it begins to drain their intelligence. because a curriculum that doesn't have enough provision for extracurricular activities may actually be a disadvantage, because creativity is important. It stimulates the brain. We look at activities that help to, boost brain activity, and creativity is one of them. Painting, dancing, drawing. Schools have different kinds of activities. Some don't have. Some don't have. So encourage your kids to participate in things like arts, music, writing, other forms of self-expression, because it boosts intelligence. This helps them develop their imagination and their problem-solving ability. That is what intelligence is all about. So even at home, like I said, you are the most important piece. So this child may not have these things at school, but at home, you can create room for them, right? Create room for your child to do coloring. Some parents don't even know what Play-Doh is. Let your child engage in creative activities that boost creativity, because it contributes to their intelligence. And the last thing, you want to teach emotional intelligence. Now, it's even called emotional intelligence. Why? Because emotions get in the way. They do get in the way. Even for you, dear parent. There are parents who have lost so many opportunities because of their emotions. Emotions contribute to intelligence, because a child who has poorly regulated emotions will struggle with their learning. So it's the ability to recognize and manage your emotions effectively. You not only have to learn that for yourself, you need to teach it to your child, right? During my course, Building a Strong Bond with Your Child, that comes up in October, this is one of the modules, emotional intelligence. You become it as a parent, and you are equipped to teach your child. It's a very key skill to have. It's essential for developing healthy relationships, because even how your child learns depends on their social environment as well. Your child's success in life depends on their ability to build and keep right relationships. So without emotional intelligence, your child may struggle. I hope that these strategies will help you develop your child's intelligence. That's what I have for you tonight. I want to leave room for questions, and I hope that I've not just, rushed through. And I don't know how, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them, and we're going to look at them. Okay? Feel free to drop your questions. I hope that you've gotten value for your time. Hope you've picked up a good number of things that you are going to go home and try. You're going to go home and help the children around you. When you see parents, calling a child dull, I'm sure you're going to know what to say. I'm sure you're going to know that this child needs help. Don't turn a blind eye. That's why we're here learning. Don't turn a blind eye when you have a child who has um, who struggles. So please let no one turn a blind eye. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at this point.